everyone. How are you today? Happy Saturday. It is the 22nd day of February, also known as Black History Month. I'm Maisha T. Hill, and I'm grateful to be live with each and every one of you on this beautiful Saturday morning. We're going to read Heal Your Way Forward, Chapter 2 today. I think it's really important that we continue to read. I just want to let you all know to pre order your paperback. When you pre order your paperback, there are some amazing goodies that you can claim. I'm going to be updating our links here in a couple of days so that you all can get your paperback goodies. But I'm really excited and grateful for the opportunity to just be present and to show up. I think one of the hardest things to do in times of global turmoil, in times of collective unrest, it's very hard to be consistent and it's very hard to show up. And so I am really trying to show up even when it's hard, even when there seems like there's no way out of no way, even when your nervous system is dysregulated. I think I've come to learn that showing up is one of the best things that we can do for ourselves and for the collective. And one of the ways that we've been showing up um, is absolutely through our mutual aid. One of the things that we talk about here at CYP is how do we know if we're really like showing up for the collective? What does that look like and what does that mean? And I think for us, it's been that radical act of mutual aid as an act of love, as an act of care, and as an act of collective liberation and collective healing. And so I just want to remind yourselves that part of the journey, um, as a person who is white and in a white body, is just to continue to remember your why you started. And, it's easy to stay in catastrophizing, but I want to encourage all of you to not catastrophize. Um, and so, one of the cool things I did want to show you all is I did want to show you the pre order goodies if possible. I'm just going to just take a minute to get that set up so you all can see what the page looks like. Um, Here we go. Let's set it up. So when you pre-order the book, you get to come and get exclusive bonuses with the pre-order of the paperback. And so there's some book reviews. There is you get a we have a book collective. It's all about Heal Your Way Forward. It is like a book club. It's always gone. There are quarterly events happening March 22nd, June 22nd, October 12th. In any of our book tour, we are going to do a book tour event, be in this group as well. So it gives you to stay in the know. I am going to be doing some writing circles. I am around Heal Your Way Forward. And this is just going to give you first access to know what we got going on with Heal Your Way Forward. You get a coloring book, which is a digital download. So I want to say thank you to Sam Beard, who has designed us a beautiful coloring book for those of you who pre order the paperback book. There is an amazing coloring book. There is a connection icebreaker games. So there is a game to do with your family, and then there's a workplace social group icebreaker. And they're connecting games and they're powerful conversations that are super engaging for you to break the ice with the people that you love. And then there is an online Jeopardy game that you can play from anywhere. It's great for team building discussions. Maybe you have a white affinity group. Maybe you have a book club, and as you guys are reading Heal Your Way Forward, you're like, let's go play the Jeopardy game. I would say read the whole book and then go back and play the game. And so what you'll do is you'll just put your name, your email, and your receipt number, and then you'll download all of your bonuses for the paperback. And the cool thing is opening up this link. You can get it from, you can pre-order it for 15 bucks over at Bookshop. You can pre-order it on Amazon. Do what you do. It comes out in about 2-ish, 3-ish weeks. And we'd just love to have your support as we continue to spread the work of Heal Your Way Forward and really help all of us stay about this life. You know what I'm saying? Been reading this book out loud for a minute, and what's been so cool is I get to see the overlap of where I was writing from 2 weeks ago versus like, I mean, 3 years ago almost, 4 years ago as I was writing. I get to see how things have shifted, how things have grown, and how things have changed. And it's always great to be on a journey with the collective and see how you have grown, shifted, and change. So I just wanted to throw that in there before I do a little bit of reading this morning. So, all right, let's go ahead and pick up where we left off, and I'll just do an overview. These videos are also on, where are these videos also located? These videos are also located on YouTube. So if you want to catch up to a chapter, you are more than welcome to go to YouTube and start from chapter one. Not only am I reading the book, but I'm giving you some context to where I was when I wrote the book, what things mean to me, how it can help you in the current world that we're living in, because there's a lot going on. And yep, let's see. All right, cool. So we were reading. Oh, I always try to make the writing bigger than me. So excuse me. We were reading chapter two, Your Great Right Awakening. And in chapter two, it talks about like it starts with a quote by Ian Levon Zant. Your willingness to look at your darkness is what empowers you to change. I think a lot of people aren't really sure like what heal your way forward means, what it's about. And one of the things I don't think folks, white people in white bodies, realize is that you're on a journey now. Once you wake up, your job is to wake up and not go back to sleep. And unfortunately, what we've seen, I will say, since 2020, it's been 5 years, everyone has gone back to sleep so that now we are in a collective shock and awe. Like everything is shock. Everything is like, how could this happen? How did we get here? And I remember saying specifically, we're going to get to this part in the book where I said, Joe Biden is not Captain Save-A-Ho. You all think that Joe Biden's going to come in and everything's going to go back to the way it is. And Joe Biden came back, everybody got comfortable. And now here we are. We are navigating dark times. And this is actually, I would say, this is actually your official awakening or your reawakening because you woke up, but you went back to sleep. And so in the beginning of this chapter, I kind of describe what it means to awaken, what I think about it. It's kind of reminds me of The Matrix, the movie where you're taking the blue pill, the red pill, and your rock bottom is your opportunity to see how the world is a construct, a matrix of socialized ideas. Um, and then I go into, let me just read this. It says at the top of page 34, you are reborn into a new reality, which might feel harsher at first, as you realize that justice and equality are not for all, and that you have not been the good white person you've always imagined yourself to be. In the moment, it's easy to go down the despair tunnel, recognizing your role in the violence you've always believed was someone else's fault. But there is also something else there, another path, which shows you a more authentic world, not one filled with colorblind toxic positivity, but real lives, real hope, and yes, real magic. Can you name the moment of your, I'll say, awakening? Which Black life had to die so that you could awaken to the reality of Black lives not mattering? Was it the murder of Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner, Lexi, Tony McDade, or George Floyd? And maybe those names aren't familiar to you, so maybe they weren't your catalyst. Maybe your awakening was far more personal. Maybe injustice or violence impacted you, someone you know, a friend, a parent, a coworker, a child, or maybe you were the perpetrator. Whatever the case, something shook you so hard to your core you recognized your divine calling, awakening you to inherent upholding of white cultural dominant ethnic socialization and the interlocking systems of oppression. And as a white person, you must understand that in the West, your culture, lifestyle, social groups, mindsets, and religious upbringings are considered and idealized by a dominant systems as the normal way of life. Any cultural group outside of whiteness, any behavior, ideology, religion, or systemic belief seen outside of that dominant culture is viewed as inferior or abnormal. And so, as I'm reading this part of the book and as I'm thinking out loud about like anything outside of the norm, like this is the moment of history that we're in right now. We are in the moment of history as where All of us are outside of the norm, right? Because the obligart has made itself visible. We've lived in an obligart this whole time. If you look at the Industrial Revolution and how things were started and formed, I believe there is a quote that says that we don't want a nature of thinking. We don't want a nation of thinkers. We want a nation of workers. And if you have a nation of workers, guess what? Workers' responsibility and workers' job is to make people wealthy, right? We wake up every day, we go to these 9 to 5s, we have friend groups, and we spend 8 hours 8 of a 24-hour cycle at a place with a role and responsibility to fit in within systems to support the systems to become wealthy. Because anytime you go against the system, anytime you try to shift away from the system, you get punished because you are rocking the boat. You are calling things out. You are viewed as abnormal because you understand that the system is not healthy, right? So let me give you an example of anything born out of the dominant culture is inferior. Here's an example for you. I'm reading again on top of page 35. As a Black woman born to a single mother, I lived in a household and was raised with my mother and grandmother who took care of me while my mom had to work. Growing up in the Bay Area suburb of Concord, most of my white peers saw my life as abnormal. And not many folks lived with their grandparents. In fact, most grandparents had legacy money that was handed down to their parents and to them and then to them. So even if their parents seemed like they were poor, there was always access to capital somehow by someone. But for me, matriarchal households were the norm, especially being partially raised in Chicago. It wasn't abnormal to see my Black friends at church, at school, or in the neighborhood with their mamas or big mamas. As I got older, I noticed how matriarchal culture was dominant throughout the Midwest, East Coast, and the South. But on the West Coast, specifically fake woke California, from UC Berkeley to SoCal suburbia, matriarchy wasn't even seen in the second wave feminist movement. Concord, California was where most whites moved to in the 1960s to get away from the ghettos of Oakland. And in 1985, a Black man was found hanged at a Concord BART station. As usual, authorities ruled the hanging a suicide, which shouldn't surprise anyone. And 1 year later, an alleged member of the KKK was convicted on one count of assault after stabbing 2 Black men at a Halloween party. Moving to Concord less than 10 years later, it would come to no surprise that my Blackness would be seen as inferior. As a young Black woman in suburbia, it wasn't normal to have full lips and wide hips. And most of the white boys teased me for my appearance and lobbied other degrading terms that challenged my Black existence. And so many of today's Black girls are still fighting to be seen in a system that elevates their peers, but then shames them for being in their full humanity. And as I'm reading that last sentence out loud, I think of the book by Ebony Janice, All the Black Girls Are Activists, where she shares what like her view of fourth wave feminism is, and she shares what she's seen around Blackness, Black womanhood, Black identity. And yes, young Black girls are adultified. Yes, young Black girls are still seen as abnormal or inferior. Um, and so I'm going to keep reading. Page 36. Even though kids were cruel to me, I learned to charge it to their hearts and not their heads. This taught me that white folks would be nice if I let it go in return. I was buying into the supremacy and normalcy of whiteness and white identity. The idea that I had to spend my life degrading my own identity and force my colonial mentality as an oppressed person. A colonial mentality is the internalized attitude of ethnic or cultural inferiority felt by people as a result of colonization. An example, them being colonized by another group. And it corresponds with the belief that the cultural values of the colonizer are inherently superior to one's own. I want to pause here because this idea of I had to spend my life degrading my own identity enforced my colonial mentality as an oppressed person. I want to just keep it real with all of us, right? Have to code switch to survive. We degrade our own identities in the name of um, we degrade our own identities in the name of fitting in. We are reading Heal Your Way Forward, which is my book. We are on chapter 2 on page 35. Sorry for those of you on Instagram. I'm just going to go ahead and upload it. I thought I had it on the screen, but maybe not. Um, Let me post that here. There you go. Now you all can see it. Let me pin it. We're reading Hear Your Way Forward. Totally spelt it wrong, but y'all will find it. I think this whole line on page 36, not 35, is something that I want to chew on just for a second. For me, I had to spend my whole life degrading my identity enforced by a colonial mentality as an oppressed person. And then I describe what the colonial mentality is. And I want to say to everyone who's watching this right now or watching the replay, thank you for watching, is how many times in your life have you spent degrading yourself to fit in society or to fit in the world? You know, now in the neurodivergent community, we call it masking. How many times do you have to mask to feel like you matter or to feel like, there's something important or powerful in your life? We have spent all of our life masking to the point that now most of us, if you're a high end millennial or Gen X or older, you're freaking exhausted. You're tired because all you've done for most of your life is try to fit in. And you've adopted, as I call the colonial mindset, to do so. Um, and so just sit on that and chew on it. I'm going to go on to the next paragraph. Understanding what I know now, many of my white peers were socialized through family and media to see me as nothing more than the help. I was a young girl who didn't have the small frame, blonde hair, blue eyes that would mark me as one of the popular girls. Even as I write this, I can hear a voice in my head whispering, well, not all white people treated me this way, because the truth is, I did have friends who did their best to be an ally for me. However, I know that my internal struggle with whiteness was driven by the allyship being offered, one steeped in the colorblind rhetoric of high end millennials who didn't see color and who positioned their own multi ethnicity without really connecting into their own ethnic backgrounds. My white peers, like most socialized to American culture, have all been impacted by what researchers are now calling racial socialization, which refers to the process by which parents transmit both implicit and explicit messages about the meaning of one's race in a broader societal context. In short, your level of awareness of the interlocking systems of oppression is based on the ways in which information was externally transmitted verbally and nonverbally, consciously and unconsciously. And according to scholars, there are four types of racialized socialization that impact how children can learn to socialize racially. And I believe this newer frameworks can help adults understand how we have come to see the world. The first one is cultural socialization, which is practices in which parents engage to teach their children how to navigate cultural space and teach cultural pride, like through dance, movement, or art. Example, growing up in America, all of us who are Americans, the 4th of July. That is a white cultural norm that on July the 4th, we are going to celebrate what it means to be American. And we are going to take pride in being American. Now that we know what we know as adults, it's like, oh, I see why y'all had us doing that, right? The 4th of July, it became a ritual. That is a form of the cultural socialization, socialized into white culture to celebrate the founding fathers, the 4th of July, right? The second piece that we have is preparation for biases. And these are practices that parents use to help their children understand what racial bias looks like, as well as strategies to cope with it. Example, I'm a Black woman in America with Black children who now have the privilege to be unschooled. With my kids, from the time that they were all 3, 4, and 5, I have always had to give them the talk. And the talk is as a Black person, you are amazing, you are beautiful, and you live in a world that hates you. Maybe you might be hearing me say that and being like, oh my God, that's too far. Is it too far? Is it too far to tell my children the truth that we live in a world that hates Black bodies, that doesn't allow Black bodies to take up space? Well, we take up space everywhere we go because we don't care, because our bodies belong. whether society says so or not, we know that our bodies belong. And it's not our job if you get uncomfortable with our bodies. And so for me, I've had to tell my kids for most of their life, they know the talk. They know the talk when it comes to police. They know the talk when they're in rooms with white folks. They know how to take notes. They know how to track conversations. I was teaching my kids how to write emails to principals of their schools about what they went through, how it made them feel, and how it relates to anti-blackness in the world. And at this point in my kids' life, because they have the privilege, let's keep it real, of being unschooled, homeschooled slash unschooled, like, they just really don't tolerate the crap I had to tolerate in a predominantly white institution, and that is that preparation for bias. I believe that if you are someone that might have the cultural identity of Jewish, right? I can't speak for the Jewish community, but I'm in a relationship with folks of the Jewish culture. Similar conversations, the friends that I talk to, "Oh, yeah, we have to have the talk too. We have to have the talk. What does it mean to be Jewish? And what does it mean to be also in a world that does not like you?" And I think that's one of the things as I sit back and think about everything that's happening around the globe. Culturally, all of us outside of whiteness and white culture, we have more in common than we think. We just allow the culture to hold us back to keep us divided. All right, going back to this. The third piece of promotion of mistrust practices parents teach their child to be cautious of interracial interactions. Lots of stories, lots of community members that I work with whose parents basically had Black people as the help growing up, and it reinforced that, like, Black people are only good for the help, can't trust them for anything else. And then there's egalitarianism, which is the practices that help parents employ to teach their children that all people are created equal and that racism is not a problem because we're all Americans. Be all that you can be. You are American. Take pride in being American. We're all Americans and we all get along and everything's great. We all know that's a scam and a lie. So your parents' external influences, social beliefs, past beliefs, and behaviors were all shaped by the influences, beliefs, and behaviors of their parents and their parents before them. So when we think about how far back culture and learned belief systems extend in a family system, we begin to understand the generational imprint of racism throughout our bloodlines and also our society. And we're going to stop there at page 37 this morning. Um, I want to say I was just read yesterday on Instagram, and I wish I had the screenshot. Someone posted, "My parent was the first parent to to have civil rights." That's wild when you think of that. My mother was the first Black woman in my family to experience civil rights. I am the second generation to have had civil rights. And you're probably like, well, we all have them. It's all being taken away. Okay, true. But your parent, depending on what you look like, had civil rights prior to the civil rights movement. So when I sit here and I reflect and I think about the collective grief that we're all navigating right now, and I think about while everyone around me is like, oh my God, what do I do? How is this? Do you know why y'all are in shock? Because you've had these rights this whole time. For me and my family's lived experience, we just got civil rights a generation ago. So for us, it's like, oh, we know how to survive this. It's your fear of survival because you've never had to face a world without having your civil rights. You've never had, if you are a white person in a white body, you have never. Now, unless you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, let's keep it real. And maybe you are also have a different identity, and maybe let's add on another intersection of Jewish. You don't know what it's like to have your rights violated or taken away. So, most of the collective shock that people in white bodies are feeling is that shock of having your rights taken, having to, oh my God, what do I do? Because for me, I don't feel that way because I have an ancestral remembrance of what it's like to not have rights. And most white people in white bodies, your ancestral remembrance is like, I've always had my rights. How dare you? How dare you take away the Department of Education? which has been around since the 80s. How dare you take away my right to an abortion? How dare you take this away? So I sit with the discomfort of saying the things that I've been taken away from, are you responding from the privilege of always having access? Because I come from a culture that just got access a generation ago. Just got access. And so when you're seeing everything that's happening in the media and allowing your nervous system to get dysregulated, you have to start asking yourself, am I being dysregulated because, oh my God? Or am I dysregulated because I've had the privilege of having the rights to access from my ancestors, and now those rights are being taken from me? And I can sit here with my full chest and saying these next 4 years are going to be hard, but we're going to be all right because the ancestor remembrance in me knows what Jim Crow was like, knows what enslavement was like, knows how to respond, knows how to stay on this stolen land that we all live on, also known as Turtle Island, and be like, I'm just gonna keep living my life. That's all I can do. You feel me? I gotta keep living one step at a time. That's all I can do. And so if you're watching this and you're curious about what I read, we read chapter 2 of Heal Your Way Forward, gave a little bit of context. This is a book to read now. I've been getting so much beautiful like feedback and reviews from people who are like, oh my God, I just read this book. It shifted my perspective. It changed my life. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I freaking love this book. My next book, though, stay tuned for that one. I just have to I'm just now ordering the books, several books I need for my next book by several amazing past and current authors that are going to help me frame my work. It's so good that I actually have one like four people who I'm like, who's going to write the forward? Oh my God, it's so good. Um, but we'll get there. So thanks for tuning in this morning. I hope you guys have a rest of your beautiful day. Pre order Heal Your Way Forward on paperback. Get your pre order goodies, and we'll talk soon. Peace.